Hello everyone and welcome to another Daily Ways on Cryptos. It's been a bit longer than a month, I would say. It was August, obviously, and markets have been a little bit quiet as well. We did, however, see that move to the downside after spiking, I think, just above the 33k handle and reversed. By the way markets are moving, it seems like in the medium term, we can either go up or down with the, I would say probably short to medium term, with the medium term being, of course, dependent on what it's going to be, what signals we're going to get in the short to medium term. We are going to explore the main scenario and the alternatives. We are moving according to the main, since the one we saw last time. And of course, remains to be seen how September is going to play out, because September, guys, in the traditional markets is a month that typically, well, it's a month of trouble. Either way, apart from BTC, we are going also to see what's going on with EGLD, Elrond. That was the pick from the Quora Inner Cycle team on Telegram. And of course, we're going to respect the vote of the participants. I have a main scenario and also an alternative as well. It's an interesting time when we look at the price action for both BTC and Elrold. Elrold seems to be closer to printing a low, and that is because, of course, it's much lower down than BTC is, but we're going to explore that when we analyze BTC. Of course, we will follow BTC's analysis. So without further ado, and with a parenthesis to remind you that none of this is, of course, investment advice, let's dive in. So this is the main scenario for BTC. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We've had wave A here, a 5-wave leg upward with an open triangle, and then an A B that is irregular. We've got wave 1 and wave 2, wave 3 and wave 4, and wave 5. Supposedly we finished that leg and we'll go in 2, 3, 4, and 5 for wave B, and from there wave C, and from there lower down. Now, even if you asked me, and based on past price action, this is not the scenario that has a lot of chances, okay? But I am not going to exclude what I see in the current price action just because, you know, we are kind of betting confidently, or some at least do, that we're going to get exactly the same price action as we have seen in previous cycles. It's not like I don't believe in previous cycles, of course I do. It's just that I also believe in the macroeconomic landscape, and we are at a complete different stage. And some of you might argue, but BTC doesn't care. Well, then I can turn back and tell you also, I don't care about what's happened in the past. We have to take into account always, okay, where sentiment lies. And we have to follow the equity markets, obviously, for that, for us to be able to assess sentiment and risk sentiment, of course, more accurately. Anyway, this is purely on, and to add this, on the idea that there is a 5-wave move to the downside here, guys. Let's not forget that. 3s follow 5s. So that's why we are currently seeing that 3, right? I'm expecting an ABC. The ABC is a 3. If we go lower back, and well, I haven't got the index now to show you, but you can go to previous videos and see this could also be a flat, right? Because that can be assumed an ABC, ABC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. there is a lot of things to consider. That looks like a 5, first of all. I mean, it could also be, you know, this ABC here that I have. It looks like a 5. So, you know, calling this a flat is like there will be a flat in the flat. Then you have B and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's one thing to remember. Second thing is that judging from that, in the one case, we don't go above 105 if we assume that is a high. That means there is no irregular scenario here, and that should be a regular flat. And typically, regular flats don't extend as low as 1618. They actually stop around 127, maybe 127, maybe 138. That means that we should have stopped around 2050 or so. Okay. And the other thing, of course, let's not forget ourselves, that if this supposedly was a wave 4, we should have seen a wave 2 that is very shallow based on guidelines, okay? Very shallow and lasting around the same period. Now, we do know for a fact that wave 2 is very deep. It did like 80-90% correction, and then you get that for wave 4. And then also wave 2 lasted probably half the time of what we see currently here, because we have to assume that ABC is a flat. So we're looking from April 21 to November 22. It's nearly a 2-year price action. So they don't match really, right? Anyway, I'm expecting a flat here, and I'm looking at this as a 5-wave leg, of course, which, you know, equally you could just turn back and tell me, why not go up from here? You know, since we have 5 waves. Well, there is 2 reasons. One is typically wave B corrects 50%. Here we've barely done a 35% correction. Okay, that's the one. The second thing is that if we look at the price action here, it looks like more like an ABC. Okay, this particular price action. So if this is an ABC, it tells us that if we don't have a diagonal, then we cannot actually reverse. There is very little chances, because reversals, guys, you get 5 waves down, right? You need to go up with an impulse or a motive wave. Okay, so unless this short-term price action turns into a motive wave, which I don't think it looks much likely, then most probably we're going to continue lower down. Now, short-term though, because this is the low, we could move up in minor wave 2 and then go down for 3, 4, and 5. And let me remind you, if this is the low indeed for wave 1, because maybe we're going to get an ending diagonal, so there is chances for a short-term downside for a double bottom at 2480. Wave 2 typically does 62. So we could head back towards 30K. That is a good risk-reward trade as well, you know, to add that on your books here. Because the downside potential is quite small here, okay, for double bottom, whereas the upside potential close 30K is good. Another thing is typically when we have ABC corrections, or even corrections that they are entailing, of course, and all of them do, legs of like impulse at the upside. Typically we see corrections in wave 4. Okay, so for example, we'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You have to see something like an A, B, and a C. Typically, wave 4 is our to-go level. Okay, that would not necessarily mean that, of course, we're going to go and move straight up from here and see for a wave C, or that is wave B. If the low is in indeed, this is probably wave 1, and that is going to be an ABC. But I will show you that now soon. Let me actually go first to these short-term variations, and then we're going to go in the short term. Okay, now look, this is one of the variations. This one assumes that we still have 5 waves to the downside, because it's hard for us not to have it. We just look at this as A. However, we'll look at wave B as an ended move. That suggests that this is wave 1 and this is W, X, and Y. And we need to go up like yesterday. But why is it not much likely? Well, guys, look, we have already come down and we trade below the 79%. When that happens, and we've also done the 90, by the way, you know, things are getting a little bit off. There is a similar case, okay, with this scenario. Here we see this as a 5-wave leg, and this is wave B, and we see as 1 and 2, and then 1 and 2. Okay, that most likely though, guys, you know, it wouldn't be a wave B. Okay, I know I do have an ABC here, but most probably if we're going to see 1, 2, and then 1, 2, this means we'll probably start a new bull run. And then I want to show you an alternate in wave B here. That can also be, you know, if we're looking at this as A and B, we might as well just see that as a C, which means ABC here again for wave X, and then we're going to see wave Y. So depending on how we move up, maybe in the medium term, we're going to see something like this play out, and we'll go down, right? Now, as we are here, I've also got to mention that if this is A and B and C, we might as well see D and E, and we'll get a triangle here, right? That will give us further upside. An alternate scenario that I'm not really a fan of, but it's a valid case, would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 here. That says this as a 5-wave leg ending down here, and we have a flat in wave B. The idea is good. The structure, it doesn't have the right look though, because supposedly, guys, this would be an ending diagonal, right? Because wave 2 is bigger than 4, wave 1 is bigger than 3, but if you look at it, it looks like it's expanding. Okay, so keep that in mind. Anyway, if something like this plays out, not only will break down here, we'll break wave 2, and we're gonna go lower down, probably lose 1840 and go for fresh lows. Now, I want to also remind you the double zigzag here, because this is also possible. We can still go down with expecting a wave Y rather than a wave C. And an alternative would also be something that I introduced last time. That is also the bottom being in scenario. Okay, we have wave 1 is extended, then deep wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, and then you have got something like an ABC here, right, for wave 4, and then we're gonna get wave 5. Now there is something important I need to mention here, guys. Okay, obvious things first. The correction in wave 2 is it's actually, I think it's 60, maybe it's 50%. It's 50%, which is fine. It's very quick versus a wave 4. So if wave 4 finished, it would have ended down here. But if it ended here, there is overlap with wave 1. So we'll go back to the previous scenario. So it's not likely. The only likely scenario is that wave 4 is not ended yet, because we have come down, we completed a running flat here, supposedly, right? Because we don't overlap with wave 1. That means we need to go up yesterday to complete wave 5. Okay, this would be for me, you know, a bullish case. So if we break above like 28.67 or so, the chances of this particular scenario are going to increase quite a bit, guys. It's not unusual for this to be something, you know, that could play out. We have an extended wave 3 here for the wave 1. We have good volumes coming in, an accumulation in wave 3, and an ABC for wave 4 and 5. There is, however, a limit for the 5th wave. Otherwise, wave 3 would be the shortest. We cannot go above 38.40 in this particular case, guys, for the 5th wave, I repeat, right? So nice divergence also here as well between 3 and 5. Well, it's not a 5, but you know what I mean. So yeah, let's see if this can also play out. Now I want to go in the short term just to show you quickly my expectation and explain a few things. So we expect a flat, right? And as I said before, Sama could argue we are done. It's just that I was saying before, if we are done, then that means that this should be assumed the first wave of a leading diagonal. Then we get something like this, okay? Up until a few days ago, I was more keen to see this actually moving up even all the way. But the problem is that instead of getting 4 and 5, we actually broke below and overlapped with wave 1. And wave 1 top is over here, let me remind you. And that is what reduces the chances of that moving higher, unless if we see, of course, well, there's two scenarios. One scenario would be that we see an ABC, we see a flat or any other pattern. Because we're on wave 2, guys, we can literally get anything here that is of corrective nature, or a motive diagonal, or what was the URL for? Well, no, this is the wave 1, so I'm expecting wave 2. There is a case of this being also extended, right? If this is going to be an ABC, you know, maybe we have wave 1 and wave 2, and then we get 3, 4, and 5. And instead, a wave 1 is going to end down here. But if this is going to drag us lower down, that's probably not going to be a wave 1. It's probably going to be a wave 5. You understand why? Because we're going to be much closer and below the previous low, okay? We're going to have a 5-wave leg in, and from a technical basis, we're going to be. Now, if this turns out, because so far it's not, to be an expanded flat, we're looking for 1618 and 200 extension. Clusters, because we need to assume, if this is wave 1 and we assume a wave 2 correction around 2850, look, we have a cluster around 2050, 2020. You see that? We're making two assumptions here though. Of course, if we move higher and we start then falling, break below, and that confirms a wave 2, then we can definitely have some better data to play with the Fibonacci expansion tool. But until then, I'm afraid we don't. So I jumped it. There we go. Look, that is the daily. We have talked about that for a while, and we expected this, of course, to play out. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is wave A done, and this is supposedly wave B. Okay, so you could have something like A, B, C, D, and E as well, and then you can say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which can play out. I'm just not sure, you know, about the structure of the triangle. This is A and B and C and D and E. You see, it's kind of symmetrical with a bit of a more bearish bias because there is more slope from top to bottom. But a wave E also coming exactly at the previous top is what adds a little bit of, you know. What else I don't like though is that if we assume this is an A and a B and a C for wave 1, because we are expecting an ABC here, guys, right? Let me make that clear. The wave 1 that looks quite big. Okay. In either way, I will give you two different scenarios here for wave 3. One would assume we cannot go below 1970. That's the 100%. We need wave 3 for a diagonal to be smaller than wave 1. But I will tell you something else. In this case, we need to look at wave 2 because wave 2 looks quite short, right? That's the issue. So if we pull that down here, this is like a measured move. You see, let me just do it in a different way to make it just a bit easier for you. I'm going to use the reverse Fibonacci here. So we're going to go and do that from here to here. Look, where is my 100%? My 100% is at 2113. You see that? So if this, which in my opinion is probably ending a wave A, I think we're going to get something like ABC here. But if we go below 2113, we probably have to start looking for open diagonal. You might ask why. Well, I will tell you why. Because when we have, and we are expecting an leading diagonal here, right? An ending diagonal, sorry, contracting. We can go as low as 1970, but in terms of wave 1, but we cannot go below 2113 in terms of wave 2. If this wave goes below 2113, yes, wave 3 is smaller than wave 1, but wave 4 would have to be bigger than wave 2, and that breaks the rules. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So I am thinking, guys, that this is a 5-wave leg down here, probably ending soon. We're going to see an upside in wave B, and then one more leg to the downside, probably below the 78, but not below the 200. Okay, so 22 might be our level for a potential move to the upside where we want to see wave 4 here. Actually, if that would be an ABC, maybe it would just be something like that. But let's not forget there is an ABC case as well. Maybe this is our 3. This assumes a 4 and we're going to get a 5. but then we got to assume that this is wave 1 and this is wave 2, this is wave 3 and this is wave 4 and this is wave 5. You see, these 4 and 5 don't really match 1 and 2. And that would be even if our B was here. You see, it's a bit more possible, yeah, or maybe here. A bit more possible, but we will still want to see, if that were a 3, we will still want to see a 4 to do the overlap, because there's no overlap so far, and then the 5. You understand? We don't see an overlap, guys. This is where exactly we came for. Sorry. So anyway, you look at it from here, you know, it needs to make sense because we don't have a diagonal otherwise. And the problem is that this is an ABC. We cannot go and assume this is not an ABC. We cannot say this is a 5. So we cannot just come and say, yeah, whatever, we're going to get 4 and 5. So it's just an impulse. Well, it's not an impulse because we have an ABC, right? I hope that makes sense. So the alternative now, it's not much different in terms of, you know, the short term and all that, but it's different from that end. This opens up the door to further downside because we have a triangle in wave B, X supposedly. You've got a running triangle, actually, A, B, C, D, and E, and it looks much more, you know, matching with the W, and, you know, the symmetry is very good as well. Wave X would be here, opens more downside because wave X is lower than, well, 69 in one case and 48 in the other case. We can assume already $20 lower. That is going to bring us down to $4, if you know what I mean. Just like, it's not the way to do it, obviously, but we have an ABC still. So I'm still thinking, if that's the case, I want to see a wave 4 up, wave 5. That was going to be leading diagonal probably. Then we'll get B and then we'll get C. Assuming this is going to be a simple zigzag. But here's my 2 cents. Because we're on wave Y, this can be any correction. And I personally think if this is indeed a wave X in a triangle and this is an ABC, I think we might not be due, you know, a simple zigzag in wave Y. We might see something else. Obviously, triangle is highly unlikely because we have a triangle in X, and a flat would be something that I might be, you know, kind of open to. The issue is that if there were a flat, you have something like of an A, a B, and a C, and that would be wave A. Wave A of a flat cannot come below that low, apparently. So, well, the thing is, in a W, X, and Y, you know, scenario, if this is X and we're gonna get supposedly a flat, we'll be getting something like this. So hold on, it would be A, B, and C. You know what I mean? Now we're on the opposite side of the structure here, which leaves us pretty much with a double zigzag. A double zigzag is possible, so you would have something like W and X and maybe a Y here, you know, or something else. But, you know, yes, it could happen, but it's just not much likely. So I'm still aiming for something like, you know, a leading diagonal correction and then one more leg to the downside, which, as I said, that's why it's alternative, opens the room to further downside. Yeah, so this is it, I guess, guys. If you have any questions, leave your comments. I'll be happy to respond. And let's not forget, in the one case for, you know, Elrond, at least we are very close to putting a low in. BTC is further from putting a low in, according to our scenario, unless if the alternative kicks in, which means we're going to get a correction and then shoot higher in perpetuity.